Welcome to this webinar this morning, getting more value from Microsoft 365 and 5 ways to improve ROI. I'm Chloe Dervin, the Managing Director of WebVine, and great to have you on board this webinar today. And I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land, the elders past, present, and emerging. So to tell you a bit about WebVine and who we are, we were founded in 2010. Gosh, that seems like a long time ago. We're a Microsoft Gold partner. And what we love mostly is really helping our clients get the best out of their Microsoft platform, in particular SharePoint, and all the capability that provides and how it's leveraged across the Microsoft 365 platform. We're based in Redfern in Sydney and have a wonderful team working across clients around Australia and some clients internationally as well. And we're the creators of Ingeo. Ingeo is an intranet accelerator, which is built on SharePoint. It's an incredible intranet, which is packed with functionality and is really rapid to deploy and powerful integrations. And it has AI capability as well. Of course, that's a hot topic at the moment. And so it really is a fantastic platform. Right, so jumping into our webinar content today, and I'm really excited to be presenting this content to you with the hope that you start to think about how your organization can get more value out of M365. So there's 3 main areas that we're going to be covering today. The first one is just talking about Microsoft 365 and how comprehensive and compelling it is. And we just had Ignite last week, and you know, if there was ever a doubt about how powerful the platform is, Satya Nadella is sure giving us a lot to work with. The second thing we're going to go into is questions to ask, the litmus test of whether you're getting value for the platform. And then we'll jump into the main section of the webinar, which is ways to get more value. So hopefully that will help you in your journey. We'll also have a bit of time at the end for questions. I'm going to be moving quite rapidly because there's so much content to get through. So let's dive into it. So this is an image to really show you the enormity and the critical mass that M365 has. It's, you know, there's so much engagement with the platform in terms of number of licenses, and year on year it's just growing and building from strength to strength. I'm not sure if you heard the announcement a couple of weeks ago where Amazon announced that it was committing over $1 billion to Microsoft, its largest cloud rival, to buy M365 licenses for its employees. So they're moving from an on-prem situation to cloud services. And it's interesting because Amazon, of course, has its own productivity tool set in the cloud, and yet they're deciding not to use it and to go across to the Microsoft cloud environment. And certainly we're seeing this trend with clients that we're working with as well. We had a recent example of a big New Zealand-based university where we helped them migrate off their G Suite environment. And so the bit that we were doing was migrating them to a SharePoint intranet. And it's just a particular trend that we're seeing, that the Microsoft platform is just getting so much traction with organizations. And the platform is very comprehensive and very compelling. You can see a couple of the icons there that you're very familiar with. And there is just so much in the offering. And there's this phenomenon called the generative AI phenomenon, which is making each of these apps even more powerful. So, you know, with the upcoming addition of generative AI with Microsoft's Copilot capabilities, each of these apps will have their own Copilot capability. In fact, Satya, one of the quotes that I loved from Ignite the other week was Satya Nadella saying, "We believe in a future where there will be a Copilot for everyone and everything you do." And certainly there is a co-pilot for all of the apps in the Microsoft world that they're building out. And so what that does is that standalone, each of these apps becomes very powerful with that generative AI support. But then when you put them all together in an integrated Microsoft 365 experience, the large language model with your data in the Microsoft Graph turns this suite of apps into an integrated, powerful productivity tool because they work intermingled and integrated together. So it really is this 10x factor, which is just becoming so powerful for the platform. And organizations are just jumping on the bandwagon to take advantage of what this is going to offer. But we can't ignore the costs of the platform. You know, on the 1st of September this year, there was an increase in the pricing by about 9%. And, you know, that every year there's an increase in the pricing. And that's not to mention that there are additional fees for some of the components of the platform. So some of the components in Power Apps and Viva, and certainly Copilot, they're priced as additional components. So like my Pilates monthly membership cost, you know, you need to make sure you're getting value from the platform. And that's what we want to do. So we've come up with a number of questions. And these questions are things that you can ask of yourself in the organization. And the hope is that these questions will give you some insights as to whether you're getting value from M365. So we're thinking about it as a bit of a litmus test. Do you remember those litmus tests? Yes, I do. In science, back in school. So the first question is, do you have a plan? So in the tech world, we're often criticized for implementing tech before the requirements have been properly laid out. With that old adage of, we'll build it and they'll come. But of course, that's not the way to approach it. But the question to ask yourself is simply, you know, do we have a simple plan for now and in the future that identifies what are our users' skill level? What are their current pain points? What are the opportunities in skilling them up and training them? What about access considerations? Where are our staff? Are they located centrally or remotely or hybrid or a combination of many different things? And what about training and support? What access do we have to that? And what about the future? How is the business going to change? And how are changes in the technology going to affect our business? So all of these questions to ask yourself. And of course, many organizations have a plan, but how current and how relevant is that amongst the rapid change of organization and technology? The next point is user adoption. How is your user adoption? I find this an incredible stat from Data3, where they say up to 56% of average businesses' Microsoft 365 licenses are inactive, underused, or unassigned. That to me is an incredible wastage of resource. So user adoption can be caused by a lack of awareness. So when you don't have awareness about what are the capabilities that are currently available to you, what's available in your current technology stack that you could be making use out of. User adoption could also be around lack of confidence. Maybe you would like the idea of migrating your working documents to the cloud, or maybe even to SharePoint, but you have no idea how to do that. And so the lack of confidence is building a barrier for you to actually do that. Or maybe it's a lack of training and support. Yes, we need a communications and messaging platform like Teams, but we're scared about team sprawl. We just don't know how to handle it, and we don't have time to manage it. So maybe that is the problem adopting a platform like that. So that's a really important question to ask. What is user adoption like? How is it going? The next question is automation. So excuse me, one tick. So how are you automating? If any of you are still doing manual processes that could be automated, then you're definitely not getting value from M365 platform. As difficult as it might be to believe for some of you, and I know some organizations are really struggling around this still, but they're still completing tasks like site access or safety checklists or HR or IT requests by the manual data collection, printing, scanning, and emailing forms. So this manual work is still going on. And of course, it's costing time. And of course, there's risks associated with this of causing errors. Excuse me. But if you're not automating these things, then you're really not using the platform effectively, because there is so much in the platform that can help you with automation. Recently, we met with a plumbing contractor who had 100 employees that were still filling in timesheets on paper. And then these paper forms had to be collected and data entered. And that's 100 times every week. That's a massive waste of effort. So here's something to think about. A typical enterprise has an astonishing 1,053 cloud apps in use. That sounds crazy, doesn't it? But let's talk a little bit about applications and the concept of being overwhelmed with the number of apps you have in an organization, and certainly as an employee, the number of apps that you have to deal with in your workday. And it's estimated that an average employee uses 10 apps each day to complete their tasks. But the problem is, the more apps that you're using, the longer, the more problems that it can cause for you, feelings of distracted or procrastinating. And I'm sure many of you have had this experience yourself. The other day I was thinking, trying to trace back, we had that important conversation, and I can't recall, was it through email or was it through Teams? Maybe it was in SharePoint, or maybe it was a text message, trying to figure out which platform you're communicating on or which platform has the information. And this Gartner survey really shows the reality of app overwhelm. People are struggling to find information or data that they need to do their job. They're making wrong decisions because of lack of awareness, because they're not in the right app, or they've received irrelevant notifications, or they've failed or missed important updates because the number of apps they're using and the volume of information that's being presented to them. So there's no doubt that technology provides a really rich set of communication options, but people are certainly struggling with this overwhelm. And something dear to our heart at WebVine is SharePoint. And how are you using SharePoint, and are you actually really utilizing it? Because what we see is that there is a huge issue of a lack of understanding and underutilization of SharePoint. For a lot of organizations, SharePoint is wildly different and maybe unfamiliar and confusing. And because of this, there is resistance to taking on board SharePoint and really going for it with utilizing SharePoint. If you've had a file server in your office, and you're used to putting stuff in the L drive or the J drive, and so that's simple for you. But because SharePoint doesn't work in that way, it scares many organizations and it confuses their staff. And so people will naturally gravitate towards something that they're familiar with. And with SharePoint being unfamiliar in that way, they don't use it. And for us, we see that as a major missed opportunity. So the good news is, when you do have some of these issues, that's a problem, which leads you to an opportunity. And so now let's dive into the opportunities of how you can create value. So the first one, it's so obvious, but so often overlooked. is about creating and developing a digital workplace plan, an opportunity to step back, think strategically, and have a unified approach to what technology to use. So it's, this is an opportunity to have a cross-functional meeting of mind between the business areas and IT, and think about how you can create a unified approach to the technology. So what are the business needs now and in the future? Are there any big changes planned in the business or with the employees and how they work? What are the key processes in the organization? How are they currently done? What opportunities are there with those processes? What's the level of skill with our employees? And what gaps does that pose? And are there any requirements for training or skill development? And let's face it, there is such a rapid progression of technology. Are our employees, are our staff keeping up to date with that? What are the levels of requirements in terms of support? Either internally, can we provide support internally, or what do we need to get externally in terms of experts? And what about the scenarios of how technologies and users might evolve? It's such a time of change at the moment. It's worth taking a moment to think about different scenarios and how that might play out for the organization. And are there opportunities to retire any tech and consolidate? So these are some of the questions you really should be thinking about in the digital workplace plan. And of course, it should be a living, evolving document. The more understanding you gain of your users and the rapidly changing technology landscape will input that to revise it again and again. Driving user adoption. So we see this as a really great, almost like a quick win in terms of getting value from a platform. So training and support are really your friends in the journey of user adoption. So once you've identified gaps in knowledge and capability from the previous step in the plan that you've done, the wonderful plan that you've done, you can suggest specific training or support programs. And so there's a lot of things that you can do internally to address this, whether that's just communications to create awareness, or whether you build out capability internally to address the training and support. One organization that we saw, one of our clients that did this, I thought really well, was they created a sort of a lunch and learn where they had IT available on a Tuesday. You could bring a sandwich and just ask questions, and they would help you work through and whether that was just user training on the intranet, just to help staff feel that they had access to IT and access to ask questions that were general, not a specific support request, but a general training environment. So I thought that was a great way of doing that. You could also send a monthly email with tips and tricks on how to use different capabilities to create more awareness for different uses of the technology. You could write blogs or direct your staff to different expert blogs. You could hold webinars or bring in experts to provide information and support to your team. So there's lots of different things that you can do. And this is all around training and really skilling up your employees about how to use the different capabilities. We know, so when we implement our intranet platform with our clients, part of the adoption strategy is working with key platform owners, and we run train the trainer sessions for them, providing a training reference guide, and also we run the training sessions which are recorded on Teams that they can then come back to later on, and it becomes part of the knowledge base. And so these internal stakeholders really wave the flag for the intranet platform and help support other people within the organization. So I mentioned before that if you're not automating, you're really not getting value from the Microsoft 365 platform, because there are so many options for digitization, whether that's data collection, manual processes, high volume, multiple touch point type of processes. These are really ripe for automation. and for improving the process, and then making it automated. So it's estimated, McKinsey had a stat flying about that almost half of current work practices in Australia could be automated by 2030. For sure, that's actually a larger number now with the generative AI that we're seeing. But certainly there's so much more that we can be doing to reduce manual process. And of course, this reduces time, but it also has a big impact in terms of reduction in errors and making the work life much more enjoyable and seamless. And so the Power Platform really provides an incredible capability to automate and digitize using Power Automate, Power Apps, Power Virtual Agents, and Power BI. We see the Power Platform as really a glue across Microsoft 365 because it connects so many components. It connects SharePoint and Teams and Outlook and Excel. So it really is this powerful integration piece. And not only that, it has the capability to integrate third-party services by providing connectors to integrate them. So what it does, it really extends the capability of the individual M365 app, and externally as well. And we've actually done a webinar on this, so certainly check out our WebVine website, and in our resources section you'll be able to find a webinar that we did on this and more information about this. But certainly this is a huge area that you can take advantage of. I wanted to show you a couple of examples of areas that are ripe for automation. The training request form, absolutely. Expense submissions, onboarding new staff. So we have a powerful attestation module in our intranet where employees can, when they're first onboarded, they can attest that they've read different policies and procedures, and that can be in a yearly cycle as well. So all of those types of things are ripe for automation. And, some organizations even like to try their own hand at utilizing the tech. So we've talked previously about this opportunity for citizen development where, these tools are much more available for people to use who haven't had previous experience or technical training to use. So, there's a lot of way to use the platform. Leveraging Microsoft 365 apps. So as we know, Microsoft is a powerhouse and it's gone full steam ahead and created an ecosystem of apps that are fantastic and really rival some of the great independent apps out in the marketplace. And there's certainly a lot of good stuff. So the point here is around before you sign up to another SaaS product or another app in the general market, think about whether there's something in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem that you could use instead, because you might have it already available to you. Of course, the best app should win, and you should never just take on a Microsoft app if it's not up to scratch, but it is a good consideration before you take on a new app. And certainly we have a couple of old apps hanging around. I have to admit, previously we used Evernote, but we've migrated across to OneNote. And there's no hesitation in selecting OneNote over Evernote. It's a no-brainer because OneNote integrates with Dynamics and Outlooks, so all the other capability that we have in-house. But we're still, as you've noticed, hanging on to Zoom just for webinars. Of course, we use Teams internally, but the Teams capability isn't quite up to scratch with webinars yet. So that's one reason we're still hanging on to Zoom. But, I'm very happy and keep on watching for the updates of Teams to see when their webinar capability can be sufficient so that we don't have to have our Zoom subscription anymore. But certainly the point here is look into the Microsoft 365 suite of apps and see if there are some apps there that can actually replace some of your other subscriptions. So that's a hot tip. Another way to get value out of the platform is by taking advantage of all the new features and services that are being made available. And, you know, this is just, these are being made available all the time. I'm not sure if you're participated in Ignite the other week. We've written a summary of all the key announcements, but there were so many new announcements of updates to existing services and new apps, and a lot of them, as I said before, around Copilot and AI. So there is certainly a lot of features and services, and it pays to stay up to date of what's coming out. But of course, you should be aware of what challenges you have internally, and then, you know, see if there are some capabilities that can support you. One cool app that we're playing with is Syntax, which is an advanced service in the M365 ecosystem and really designed to understand content and processing. So, you know, dealing with lots of content. So an example, a use case that we're playing with is how it deals with high volumes of varied contents, for example, invoices or contracts. So you could use it to create a contract management process by automating classification, data extraction, and then integration of contracts into business workflows. So that's a really cool app that we're playing with at the moment. But there's lots of things being released again and again. And so definitely check out our Microsoft Ignite summary that we've just released that will highlight a couple of the key services. And we try and keep our blogs up to date with interesting updates that we think our clients would make use of. This is a quick dashboard to show you that there just is so much that's being rolled out on the Microsoft 365 roadmap again and again. And of course, you know, conversely, you know, it's great to be aware of all these new components, but you know, the basics still apply. You still need to have a proper business case around why you're going to utilize this technology. And you don't want to just jump on the new shiny object. You need to, of course, be aware of the risks associated with doing so. And go through proper due diligence in the organization before taking on a new component. So I spoke earlier about SharePoint and the lack of understanding and how this can lead to fear and doubt. And it means that, you know, your organization is really missing out on the benefits of SharePoint. You know, it's an incredibly powerful document management capability, but there are so many other benefits as well. It's apart from the robust document management capabilities that really allow you to organize and store and retrieve documents. And, you know, one of the Ignite announcements was SharePoint Premium, which is just going to add even more value to it. You know, it's also a very powerful one-stop shop intranet for managing forms and policies and procedures, and has the ability to share. So the collaboration capabilities of SharePoint is quite fantastic as well. We see it as a very central pillar of M365. It integrates seamlessly with Teams. It's a part of the back end of Teams. You know, we talked about the Power Platform before and how that integrates and makes SharePoint even more powerful as well. And so it really provides a central pillar of your digital workplace. So we've just come to the end of the webinar. Wow, that went really quickly. I hope that I've given you some insights and some I hope there's been some thought-provoking questions there for you to think about, and some ideas to help prompt you and your organization to dive in and inquire and get some more value from the M365 universe. We have a special offer for this webinar, which is a 45-minute free discovery session with us where we can deep dive into, you know, what your current environment is and provide you some suggestions. We'd love to offer you that capability, so please do reach out to me. This is how you can get in touch with the QR code or through that email. And I did want to see if there are any questions. Please pop them in the chat. We have a very brief minute that we could answer any of your questions. And one of the questions that was coming up earlier was, where did it start in getting value from M365? And so one of the things I would say for you is certainly a quick win would be to think about adoption. Really focus on adoption. It can be hard, but some of those points that I mentioned before around adoption would be, you can start to support your teams in utilizing the technology. The long-term win and, a really important starting point, of course, is around creating more of the plan, the strategic plan and roadmap. So that would be my 2 hot tips for that. So are there any other questions? If you want to pop them in the chat, that's fine. Or else, feel free to reach out and get in touch. We love hearing from you. Thank you, David. He written a comment that was very informative. Thank you so much. I hope this has been a useful and helpful webinar for you. And please do check out our blog because we do post updates there so that you don't have to navigate all of the announcements from Microsoft. We try and summarize that and provide it to you so that you can use that as a starting point. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.